If you are visiting Belgium for the first time this year, make sure you watch this video because in it, I'll be sharing all sorts of tips and must-knows for first-timers. Hi, I'm Christina from happytowonder.com, and to be honest, the first time I visited Belgium, I actually didn't like it at all, but now I'm older and wiser, and I realized that's actually because of mistakes that I personally made. I've now been back several times and can safely say that Belgium is actually a super cool country. You just need to know how to navigate it properly. Let's start with Belgium travel planning tips. The first thing you need to know is that Belgium is actually divided into a few different regions. So while Belgium is a very small country, it has two distinct halves, specifically Flanders in the north and Wallonia in the south. Flanders is the Flemish-speaking part of Belgium, where they speak Flemish, which is pretty much Dutch, and Wallonia is the French-speaking part of Belgium, where of course they speak French, except for this little portion that speaks German. So while the official languages of Belgium are Dutch, French, and German, you'll find that it's actually more that the different regions focus predominantly more on certain languages rather than the entire country speaking all of them at the same time. Now, Brussels, the capital, is kind of the exception to this. Brussels is officially considered bilingual, so you can get around with either Flemish or French, but based on my personal experience, it feels like people there definitely speak more French. All that said, English is pretty widely spoken in Belgium, so you don't have to worry too much. It's also worth noting that different places in Belgium actually have their French and their Flemish names, and oftentimes at bus stations or train stations, depending on where you are, you will encounter either one or the other. And sometimes, even more confusing, they're not the same as the English names that we know these cities by. Take Antwerp, for instance. We know it in English as Antwerp, but in Flemish it's actually spelled like this, and in French it's Anvers, so it's obviously a little bit different. The first time I saw that, I actually thought it was a completely different place, so that's just something to be mindful of. If you are traveling to multiple destinations during your trip, make sure you know their name in French and in Flemish so that you know what you're looking for when you're at the train station, because it can be really stressful when you're trying to catch a train and you're like, I'm not sure if this is going where I need it to. The same logic also applies to train stations. So for instance, in Brussels, if you see this train station, it's actually the same as this one as well. Now, another tip I have, if you're going to Belgium, do not spend all your time in Brussels. Now, the reason I say that is a lot of people think that visiting the capital city of Brussels is the main must-do in Belgium, but in my opinion, that's actually not the case. I honestly feel like there are way nicer places to visit in Belgium than Brussels. Now, Brussels is a big city with lots of cool attractions and museums, but if you're looking for a quainter, little city vibe, then honestly, Bruges, Ghent, or Dinant are a lot more enjoyable in that sense. I also really liked going to Leuven and Antwerp. I think both of those are really beautiful cities as well. And of course, there's lots of nature spots in the Ardennes if that's what you're looking for. Now, in terms of when to visit Belgium, I would recommend going in the shoulder season or off season. And the reason for that is just because the main attractions in Belgium, in my opinion, are the cities. And so cities are fun to visit even if the weather isn't amazing. So just make sure you pack for the elements correctly and you're gonna have a great time no matter what. Now, if you're really struggling to decide when to go to Belgium, one tip I have for you is to look up different festivals that take place, because one of the coolest things about this country is they have loads of cool festivals and cultural events that you can take part in. So now I'm not just talking about music festivals, even though Belgium is home to one of the most famous music festivals in the world, Tomorrowland. I'm actually talking about cultural events and folk festivals. I have recently learned about a ton of cool Belgian cultural traditions because of this one TikTok account that I'm absolutely obsessed with. It's called Luna Discovers Belgium. And basically she goes to these different cultural events that take place throughout the year in Belgium. And there are so many, and they're really, really fun. Now, in terms of arriving in Belgium, despite being a super small country, they actually have 5 different international airports. But if you're coming from outside of Europe, odds are you're gonna be landing at the Brussels International Airport. The one thing I'll say about that is don't let that limit you and make you think you only have to spend your entire trip in Brussels, because Belgium is really small, so you can easily get from Brussels to pretty much any other city in Belgium within 2 hours by public transport. So don't think that you need to spend all your time in Brussels just because you land there. This is why I'd personally pick 1 or 2 base cities, depending on how long your trip is, and then just doing day trips out to different areas instead of hopping around and changing hotels consistently, just because things are really close together, so it's very easy to do day trips. Now, on that note, I'm a huge advocate for traveling around Belgium by train rather than renting a car. And one of the main reasons for that is the Belgian train system is actually blessed with a number of enticing discounts. So I'm gonna review some of the top ones for you right now. For example, those under the age of 26 can enjoy super cheap train travel across Belgium through something called the Go Pass One, which allows you to book a fare anywhere in the country for only €7.10 each way. And if you're a little bit older, don't worry. If you're over 26, another really great deal is something called the Standard Multi-Rail Pass, which basically gives you 10 trips to use over the course of a year. And these trips can be transferred to other people within your party, so it's really handy if you're traveling in a group. But that's not all. The SNCB has a ton of different deals that you can take advantage of. So if you plan your day trips or side trips for a weekend, you can actually save 50% off your round trip ticket with a weekend ticket, which is valid on trips that leave after 7 p.m. on Fridays and then return before Sundays. Or you can take advantage of their Discovery tickets, which offer you 50% off your train tickets so long as you purchase an admission ticket for one of these attractions that's on their list. And they also have a Bravo ticket as well that gets you 50% off train tickets if you're traveling to a specific concert, festival, or cultural event. Now, another reason to take trains in Belgium is they actually have some really beautiful train stations there. There's actually 2 stations in particular that frequently make the list of most beautiful train stations in the world. The first one is Antwerp, which looks like this. It's absolutely stunning. And the second one is in Liège. And if you watch Marvel movies like I do, you might recognize it as Xandar from the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie. Of course, before you get way too dazzled by the beautiful train stations and aesthetics and great deals, I do need to say that Belgian trains can sometimes be very confusing. Big cities often have multiple train stations, and if you're not careful, you might actually get them mixed up and show up at the wrong station and miss your train, which is something I personally did once, and I feel really stupid admitting that. Brussels, for instance, has 3 stations, North, Central, and Midi, all of which are known by both their Flemish and their French names. So as you can see, it can be a bit confusing, so make sure when you're booking your tickets, you're actually booking the station closest to where you need to go. All right, now let's move on to the tasty stuff. Oftentimes when people talk about Belgium, they'll talk about the beer, the chocolate, the waffles, the fries. But there's actually a lot of tips and must-knows about these different things that I feel like most guides don't cover, so I'm gonna do that right now. First of all, when it comes to frites, remember, they are not French fries, they are Belgian fries. Now, apparently the reason we know them as French fries in North America is because American soldiers during World War I thought they were in France. Literally, they were in Belgium, but they thought they were in France because people were speaking French, and so they called them French fries, and that legacy has stuck by even today. So don't make that mistake when you're in Belgium, they are not French fries. Now, the defining characteristic of these Belgian fries is they're deep fried twice in animal fat. So if you're vegetarian or vegan, just know that this usual safe food for you is not actually vegetarian in Belgium. That said, there usually are veggie-friendly options somewhere in this, so just make sure you do your research so you know which ones you can safely eat at. Of course, there's no shortage of amazing places to try fries when you're in Belgium, but the most satisfying way is definitely from a takeout sort of situation where they'll give it to you in a paper cone with a nice little dipping sauce. And on that note, sauce is absolutely non-negotiable in this situation. And I'm not just talking about ketchup, because you can have ketchup anywhere. Make sure you get some kind of sauce that is not what you typically get, because that's what you're here in Belgium for, right? Now let's talk about chocolate. When you go to Belgium, there are chocolate shops everywhere. But one really important thing to know about these chocolate shops is oftentimes you can go in and actually just buy 1 or 2. So you don't have to commit to a full box. This way you can actually DIY your own chocolate tour wherever you go in Belgium. Now, another thing is when you're going to different cities, look out for unique chocolate products in each place that you visit. Because I've personally noticed a lot of cities will pay homage to something famous from their city in chocolate form. So in Antwerp, for instance, you can buy chocolate diamonds because that city is really famous for its diamond trade. So yes, make sure to keep an eye out when you're in chocolate shops to see if there's anything unique to that city specifically. All right, now time to discuss waffles, my personal favorite topic. Okay, so everybody knows that Belgian waffles are amazing. What not a lot of people know though is that there's 2 main types of Belgian waffles. First off, there's the rectangular Brussels style waffle, which looks like this, and then there's the roundish Liège style waffle that looks like this. Take note that these are very different. Brussels style waffles are fluffier and they're usually served with toppings like whipped cream and fruit, whereas Liège style waffles are a lot denser, they're sweeter, they have these little pearls of caramelized sugar inside that are amazing, and they're best enjoyed plain without any toppings. This is an important distinction because often when you're in a touristy place, you'll notice that they'll have all sorts of display waffles that have tons of toppings, kind of just to be eye-catching and to get tourists over there. But with Liège waffles, if you put toppings on it, it's just such a waste because they're really delicious on their own. So just keep in mind that when they're roundish like this, they're best enjoyed plain, and when they're rectangular, that's when you can go crazy with the different toppings. On that note, you can kind of use that as a gauge to see whether or not the place you're going to is an authentic waffle place or if it's more geared towards tourists. So if you see displays like this that have Liège waffles that are topped with a bunch of whipped cream and fruits, you probably have an idea that it's not going to be the most authentic. Another clear sign is when they have their menu in a bunch of different languages or when they say things like best price. Now let's move on to beer. True story, I hated beer until I tried it in Belgium. It's honestly so different and incredible, but there's a few things that you need to know. First off, take note that Belgian beers can be a lot stronger than you're used to, so indulge accordingly. Number 2, note that they take their glassware very seriously, and oftentimes depending on the beer you order, it'll come in its own special glass. This is important and also very fun. Third, know that Belgian beers are diverse and complex. I won't go into detail about the different styles of beer because that's going to take forever, but one important thing to note that unlike in Germany, where there's a purity law that says you can only have 4 ingredients in your beer, in Belgium, they've always been given free rein to kind of experiment and do whatever they want. This is why there's literally a beer for every type of person in Belgium. You kind of have to just experiment and try it. Of course, beyond just the snacky food and drink items that we just covered, I do need to give a shout out to proper Belgian dishes as well, because Belgian cuisine is actually really delicious, and there's a few must-tries that I personally love that I really recommend you try at some point during your trip. So the first one is vol au vent, and it's like this creamy meat stew that is served in a crispy pastry. It's really, really good. There's also carbonade flamande, which is a Flemish stew, and it's this meat stew that's made with beer as well, and it's super good. And of course, mussels with fries is another very popular Belgian dish, and it's really cute because you can say you had mussels in Brussels. All right, now let's wipe the drool off our faces and get to some tips for when you actually arrive in Belgium. So the first one is to be sure to carry coins for the bathroom. I've noticed that public bathrooms in Belgium aren't actually that common, and when you do find them, oftentimes you'll have to pay, so it's usually something like 50 cents to €1. I actually discovered this very angry Reddit thread where some people complain that even in movie theaters in Belgium, sometimes you have to pay for the bathroom, which to me is just unheard of. But yeah, just know that you should carry around coins just in case you need to use the bathroom, and also get in the habit of using bathrooms before you leave museums or restaurants. Another reason to carry around coins is a lot of the time museums will not allow you to have bigger bags. I've noticed in Brussels especially, they were stricter with this than anywhere else I've been. So if you have a backpack, oftentimes they'll ask you to put it in a locker. And a lot of the time these lockers actually, they require a €1 coin as a deposit. So just make sure you always have a €1 coin just in case so that you're able to use the lockers. Otherwise it's just really awkward. Like, where are you gonna get a €1 coin from? On the topic of museums, be sure to look out for free museum days. So in Brussels, for instance, a lot of the museums in the city are actually free on the first Wednesday and the first Sunday of every month. Antwerp has a similar thing where it's the last Wednesday of every month. There's quite a few free museums. And Liège also has some free museums on the first Sunday. So this is just a standard thing that they do in a lot of cities. So before your trip, just have a quick look to see if any of the free days align with your schedule, and then you can plan accordingly. Of course, if there are no free days during your visit, not all hope is lost. There's still some ways to save big on major museums and attractions. And one way is definitely through purchasing a city card. So if you plan on visiting a lot of paid attractions during your time in Belgium, a lot of cities will have a city card or a city pass that includes a bunch of attractions for one set price. Oftentimes this can save you a lot of money if you were planning to visit a bunch of attractions. I've personally used the Brussels card in the past and thought it was really, really good value just because Brussels has so many cool museums. And when you have this card, because it's all included, you feel like more inclined to check out more hidden gems or museums that you wouldn't have otherwise paid for. And so it's quite a fun way to discover places that are a bit more off the beaten path. Now, one thing to be wary of though when you're planning your day is Google Maps. I found that for some reason in Belgium, the Google Maps opening hours don't tend to be accurate. And I don't know if it's just bad luck, but I feel like on every single trip that I've taken, specifically to Brussels, there's always been an instance when I've been duped by the opening hours on Google Maps. Like, I'll show up to a place and it's closed when it says it should be open. So just keep that in mind whenever possible. Look on the official websites of places instead of relying on what's on Google Maps. The last thing I'll say is that Belgians have a very unique sense of humor. And for an example of that, look no further than the fact that their #1 tourist attraction is this little statue of a peeing boy that they dress up in different costumes. And if that's not enough, they actually have a little statue of a peeing girl and a peeing dog as well that not a lot of people know about. There's also a hotel in the country that's shaped like a giant intestine. All that to say, come to Belgium for the waffles, the beer, and the chocolate, but stay for the quirky sense of humor and stories. There are so many funny random stories that are attached to Belgian attractions, so I definitely recommend more than normal for you to do some research and kind of look into the places that you're visiting, because I guarantee you're gonna find at least one funny story about that place. And of course, when you have these stories in mind, it just makes visiting places a lot more fun. All right, I hope you found that video helpful. And as usual, if you want more practical travel videos just like this one, be sure to like and subscribe for more. I'll see you guys next week. Thanks for watching. Bye.